Man, today I want to tell y'all the tale of how I almost died in prison.
Get ready for news and views from Lubbock, Texas, USA. What's going on and real talk with people who move and do things. This is the Focus LBK Show with your host, Robert Jenkins.
Hey, what's good, y'all? This is your brother, Robert Jenkins, welcoming you to another episode of the Focus LBK Show. This, in fact, is episode 113 of season 3. Thank y'all for sticking with us and growing with us this entire time. Man, today I want to tell y'all the tale of how I almost died in prison. Now, if you know me, you know, of course, I've never actually been to prison. I've never served time in prison. However, I am glad to be able to travel with a prison ministry group called Freedom in Jesus Prison Ministries. And one of the reasons I'm glad to travel with that group is because I believe that they do a lot of good. So years ago, when I first got back to Lubbock, I'm talking about, this is 2022, I was doing research and I came across a picture of TJ Patterson. I was doing research for Black History Month for a film that I was making. I think it was on TJ Patterson, obviously. And I saw him, a picture of Mr. Patterson and some stalwart members of his crew behind bars at, I think it was here in Lubbock at the county jail out here. I'm not sure where it was, but they were ministering and talking to the inmates of that prison or that jail. And when I looked at it, I said, man, I think I would like to do that. I don't know why I felt like I wanted to do that. And I don't, to this day, I don't understand why that is something that appealed to me. But I remember asking God to say, hey, I would like to do that, Lord. I definitely would like to do that. Honestly, I'm puzzling here because I still don't understand what in me, what there is in me that finds that to be something that I want to do. Specifically because I will tell you, when you go visit prisons and jails, it is utterly and utterly and completely depressing and soul crushing because because you're housing inmates, you're housing humanity in what is ultimately an inhumane system. And I'm not one of these people who thinks you should abolish prisons or abolish jails. There are plenty of people in prison and jail who did things to get there. In fact, I would say most people in prison or in jail did the very things that they did that rightfully put them in prison. But be that as it may, one of the things you notice that Jesus did in the Bible, it talks about it in the Bible. There's verses in the Bible that says, visit the prisoners. In other words, Jesus recognized that doing time away from your family and friends, yes, you most likely have committed a crime to get there. There are some innocent people in prison. That's got to be even worse. But most of the people there did something to deserve being there. But that doesn't mean that you throw away the key and forget about them, I guess. I'm thinking this through as I'm talking to y'all, but I just want to say to you that it is a very worthy thing to visit those who are in prison. And as I say, I travel with a group called Freedom in Jesus Prison Ministries, led by Mr. Stephen Canup, also the president of the organization, the founder of that organization, Freedom in Jesus Prison Ministries, a gentleman named Don Castleberry. We interviewed Stephen Canup on this show, and Stephen Canup also in one of his podcasts interviewed the founder of Freedom in Jesus Ministries, Don Castleberry. And the strange thing about Mr. Castleberry is he was as I recall, he was a dishonest banker. He embezzled some money from a bank Never got caught for it, but turned himself in and served his time. And when he got out, founded Freedom in Jesus Prison Ministries. And that's who I eventually was able to hook up with. And we started visiting. They have we started visiting. They have been and continue to visit prisons pretty much every weekend somewhere in the state of Texas. And they also go abroad as well. We're trying to see if we can make something like that happen with me. But down every weekend, they go to a prison here in Texas. So last weekend on 7 November, we went to the Clements unit. And I wanted to tell y'all about that because, yes, I was not joking. I almost died in prison. In fact, the next day when I thought back about it, I almost had a panic attack. Like, oh, man, I could have died. But let me set your mind at ease. When I almost died in prison this past week, it wasn't because I got attacked by inmates. Although there was a time during this visit where we were circulating on a cell block, mixing with individuals who were locked up, but who were out of their cages. They were just on the cell block, relaxing and talking to each other. And we went in there and talked to them. But what we really did was this past weekend, 7 November at the Clements unit, what we really did, the object of the journey of the trip is to go down and speak to some of the men who are imprisoned. And they are some of the men who are actually kind of in prison within a prison because they have done some violent things or some whatever the case may have been. And they've ended up in administrative segregation. I think they call it ADSEG. So they are really not able to come out of their cells, and they're really not able to go to the chapel because during these weekend crusades, Freedom in Jesus Prison Ministries, they do different things. They have revivals, which is where they go into a big room and they have, it's a chapel or whatever, and they celebrate with all the people that want to be there, and they celebrate God, they worship, they praise, they sing, they dance, they do everything you do at church, but they do it in the chapel. Well, like I say, in prison, there are other people who cannot leave their cells and go to the chapel. So this weekend, we went to minister to those individuals who were not able to attend regular services, those people who were locked in their cells pretty much 24/7. I think they get out an hour a day or something like that, but they are just not allowed privileges. And my understanding is, like I said, it's oftentimes because they've been violent or something in the past. So we wanted to take this opportunity. I do a lot of media work for Freedom in Jesus Prison Ministries, and we want to take this opportunity to get photos and videos, and we filled out all the correct forms. There's, you have to fill it out well in advance, couple of 2 or 3 months in advance. And it finally came through. We were permitted to come in. I was permitted to come in with the camera. And I will tell you, LBK, you ever felt like you had favor to do something? You ever felt like God set something up for you to do it? Well, I felt that way entering into the Clements unit with my camera. And this is not the first time I've gone into prison with the camera. This is the second time, actually. The first time we captured footage of the inmates out in the open air, celebrating and praising and worshiping. This time, we wanted to capture footage and photos of us going cell to cell because we didn't have a lot of that footage. We needed some new footage, and we needed we needed to update our content. And that's what we did. But I say I had favor. I felt it from the moment I got there. I feel like maybe I shouldn't say this on air, but when I got there, it's prison now. This is prison. It is high security. They don't play. They don't bullcorn around. The first thing you got to do is come in and, like the airport, take off everything and put it in a gray tote and slide it through the x-ray machine and get it inspected. And then you got to show your ID. They match it to your face. Make sure you are the person on the ID. They take your ID and then they give it back to you later when you walk through the door. So we had to go through a pretty intensive screening process. And yet, talking about favor, none of the guards at the checkpoint showed the least bit of concern about my camera. I thought that was so weird. It was so weird that other people in our group, other volunteer prison ministers, who do this in, for example, there was a contingent from Oklahoma. They were looking at us like, man, y'all can just come in prison with cameras in Texas. I thought Texas say don't mess with Texas. Y'all can just roll up in here with cameras. And I was like, well, I mean, we filled out the paperwork, but you're right. They didn't give me a second look. They didn't care. They knew that we were coming, I'm sure, because we were on a list, and we know we filled out all the right paperwork to enter with a camera. But I still I expected some scrutiny. We did not receive any scrutiny. Like I say, other people in our group was giving me scrutiny. Like, man, are you okay? How you get that in? You good? Like, yeah, I think I'm good. Stephen is the one that set all this up for us, and he's an expert at this stuff. So I know he did, because matter of fact, I printed out the form and I got it in my wallet right now. Matter of fact, I had it on me when we was in the prison, because I was waiting for somebody to charge me up and be like, yo, come here. What you got right there? Why you got a camera in here? So I literally have the form right here. Maybe I shouldn't show you what's all on it, but I mean, I got the form right here. They never asked for it. Never said anything, never accosted me, didn't raise an eyebrow. When they looked at my little belongings when I put them in the tray, they didn't ask me questions about it. They was just like, come on in, bro, for all intents and purposes. So I was like, oh, okay, I think we are being given favor here. Now, I took we made some really wonderful photos, both for Freedom in Jesus, and we captured, we were able to execute the mission that we were sent to do. And I will say, man, Freedom in Jesus Prison Ministries, I got nothing but praise for them. That is a hard job. When you go into prison and I've never been in prison. I didn't even know where the Lubbock City Jail was you know what I'm saying? I just learned that when I started working at the city. Cause I had to go over there and do my thing over there, make pictures and stuff. And so anyway, I ain't never been near prison or jail. There are some people, in fact, most of the people in the group of Freedom in Jesus Prison Ministries are people who have served time in prison. So it must be a trip for them to come back and go in and see people that they used to be in the prison with, or see people who are still in prison that they used to do dirt with back in the days. There was a gentleman in our group. He's a local cat. I don't want to say his name. Me and him know each other pretty well. He's a returning citizen, as my boy Ricky Gaines would say. I don't like to say inmate or a former convict. He's a returning citizen, because this gentleman I'm thinking about, he out here in the world doing it, making it work, man. He owns some gyms and all kind of stuff. So anyway, while we were in there, he even told me, this guy that I'm thinking about, this friend of mine, he was like, man, I was doing time on this same prison ward, the same cell block. I think he said like 6 years ago, or a few years ago, 2 or 3, 4 years ago, or something like that. And he was dapping it up with people in there. They knew that's his homeboy. They slapping, what's up, man? You hold your head up, man. You gonna get him. Dude, that's got to be weird. But it's also equally weird for a cat like me that didn't even know where the county jail was, or the downtown jail was, to be in a maximum security prison. Now, I'm going to tell you real quick how I almost died. Like I say, we were out there mixing and mingling at certain points with inmates freely, with no protection. I didn't see any guards. I'm thinking about it. Every time I find myself surrounded by inmates, I don't be seeing no guards. They be there, I'm sure, but I don't know where they be, because I don't be seeing them. But I be surrounded by my brothers in Freedom in Jesus Prison Ministries, and those gentlemen, while not guards, they are some stalwart, brave souls. So we're in there making pictures and doing what we do. And I'm talking to this cat that I was mentioning a minute ago, who was from here, that I know and who served time there. And me and him was having a pretty decent little conversation, and he was walking out. Now, when you in prison, it's a door. When you go on the cell block where everybody's locked up, everybody's locked in individual cells. Boom, boom, boom. When you come out of those cells, you still be locked in a larger room where those cells are contained. And there's a thing called, I think it's called a sally port, which is basically a little room about, I think it's about 4 by 8, about maybe 5 by 10. And it's got 2 real hardcore prison doors on it. One on this side and one on this side. On this side, that's where the inmates are housed at inside the individual cells. And then you open that door. It opens real slow too. It's like, it take all day to open. You go in and then it closes. Only when that door closes, clang, does the other door open that lets you out to the other part of the prison, the hallways and stuff. So there's a trap door basically that separates. And I don't want to get too much into it because I'm not trying to give away any kind of details that might be used for nefarious purposes. But I do want to tell you what happened. This is where I almost died at. So I'm chit-chatting with my buddy. And we walking through the Sally Port doors, and we in there. They closed both doors on us. Doom. We in the little room, about 10 of us. I think it can hold 10 people at once or something like that. And then the other door opened, and people started walking out. When the door started closing, and me and him was in the back, so we didn't get to go out quick. He walked out. The door was closing, and I said, "Oh, the door it's getting closed. It's closing like this." And I say, I'm thinking. I can't see how I was so stupid. Oh my God, I almost died. I'm thinking, okay, this is like an elevator. You know, if you go up in an elevator and put your shoulders in the door and let it hit you, it'll hit you and then boom and open up. So I call myself, I know, it was stupid. I call myself gonna go up in there and put my shoulders up in here and stop this door, and it's gonna hit my shoulders and then open up. And I tell you what, I stepped up in there and put my shoulders in there, and unsurprisingly, it's like the Terminator. It absolutely will not stop until you are smashed. So it's closing, and I'm getting crushed in the door, and I say, whoa, let me step back. And I step back, but my hand was kind of still right there, and it was still closing, and I said, whoa. And that's when I realized, I was like, dude, this is not an elevator. You are not at some store or some business where you finna go in an elevator and go up to the next floor. This door is not finna stop, dude. You almost got crushed. You a fool, dog. You need to. I say, man. And everybody kind of laughed about it after it didn't crush me. They were like, whoa, man, you all right? I was like, yeah, I am. I looked at my camera. I had a little scratch of paint on my camera side. I was like, golly, man, this thing almost crushed your boy. I say, yo. Now, we joked it off, but like I say, the next day when I was at home sitting in my office on my birthday, actually November 8th, I'm sitting there chilling. And I almost had a panic. I say, man, I could have died. That door was not going to stop. And I don't know where my mind was. I am not usually that unpresent, that unaware of my surroundings. I don't know what I was doing, but we was having a good conversation. That ain't no excuse. I was about to be smashed up in a prison door. The inmates ain't got to get me. It ain't got to be no violence, and I ain't got to get caught in that. I'm the guy that's finna get crushed in the door. I couldn't believe it. I say, man, boy, I tell you what, that is pitiful and sad. But luckily, they say God looks after fools and babies, so I imagine I'm a little bit of both in certain ways. So he definitely popped me back out them doors. Get back, boy. That's what he did. He looked at me and said, boy, get your butt out of that. Come on now. Anyway, that's how I almost died. That was certain death. You know what? It might not have been certain. No, if I'd have got stuck in there, it'd have been certain death, because them doors don't stop. It's prison. It's not an elevator. Oh my God. I'm about to get nervous thinking about it again. But anyway, that's how I almost died in prison this past week. You know, in certain other ways, I kind of died too, because some of the things that you see in prison are enough to make you die a little bit on the inside. And I can't imagine how it feels to be actually in prison. Even if you have done wrong, that has got to be a hellish place. You do need to pay for your crimes. If you have proven that you cannot live with others in society, then you do need to be separated. But man, prison is no joke. It is no joke. A piece of you kind of dies when you go in there too. And I will tell you what, man, some of the pictures that we made, some of the faces that I saw, it made me think about a lot of different things. And like one of the questions that I had was, I was looking at some brothers in there. When I say brothers, I mean, they was of all colors. Although, let's get real. Here's one of the first things that kills you a little bit when you go into prison. It is mostly black men. I don't know what the exact percentages are, but the Clements unit that we went to was heavily black. Some of these guys are super young and innocent looking. When I say innocent looking, they look like kids, but the eyes always tell. The eyes are hard. You always see, you see the same look in prisoners' eyes that you see in combat experienced soldiers and cops who have been through some stuff. Seen a lot of crazy stuff on the streets, or soldiers that have been in combat, and also prisoners. And there's another group of people that have these hard eyes, and I'm not going to get into that right now, but it's very surprising because they ostensibly haven't been through anything traumatic, or maybe they have. Again, I don't want to mess up this talking about that group of people. Maybe I'll talk about that some other time. But there's a surprising group of people out there that have hard eyes, like cops and like convicts and like combat experienced soldiers. But these prisoners that I was looking at, man, it takes something out of you. And the reason it takes something out of you is because you are seeing faces upon which there is written the gravest despair. Some of the faces surprisingly shine and are bright with joy. These are the men that we saw that are working with the chaplain service, for example. There's a couple of brothers. There was one brother in there who actual face looked like something out of a nightmare, because he was one of these cats that had tattoos. He tattooed his face. And he was one of these cats that one of our dudes that was ministering with us knew him. And he said, boy, we used to get into, ooh, we was terrible. All kind of violence and debauchery and craziness. You know what I'm saying? And this cat that I'm talking about, I don't know his name. And if I did, I wouldn't say it, because I don't think we're authorized to. But like I say, he had that full, like a demon, like a skull tattooed on his face, like skeleton teeth and eyes. And you know what I'm saying? In other words, he had a skull tattoo on his face. And he's one of those cats that reminds me of, on the outside, reminds me of the MS-13 gangs. You see a lot of gang members with these tattoos like that on their face. And to me, that is particularly horrifying. I'm not much on tattoos. I spent 21 years in the military. I don't have a single tattoo anywhere on my body. I don't have I got a mark on my body, but it's not a tattoo. From my military experience and knowing a little bit about MS-13, Mara Salvatrucha, I think they're a South American gang that actually kind of started in the United States and then migrated back to like Guatemala and became spread through the prisons there, if my understanding is correct. The point is, they are a strange, scary little group of people who essentially worship death, as I understand it, in some kind of way. They require, to get in the game, you got to do violent, bloody, demonic stuff. They be cutting people's hearts out, and the stuff they do is just like, oh. And these are the people that you see with all these numbers, the 13s on their face. And so when I see people with tattoos on their face, I have a visceral reaction of, these are potentially dangerous. Because think about it. Your face is how you present yourself to society. If you have disfigured your face purposefully to show allegiance to a violent gang, what you're also saying is that you are purposefully eschewing, or you are purposefully turning your back on ever being a productive member of society. So in other words, you're saying, with that tattoo on your face, all that stuff, your skull on your face, your numbers and all that stuff they be having, you are saying, I do not embrace normality. I embrace abnormality. I am against you, normal people in society. I never wish to be part of you, which to me says you wish to be against us. You're an enemy of normality, which to me says I need to be armed and on my tippy toes when I'm around people like that. So I'm thinking, you seeing people in prison covered with that kind of ink. And yet this one particular cat that I'm thinking about, He got the smooth, like, player glasses on, the grill and all that stuff. His face looks like he would be a nightmare. And yet, he's on the prison chaplain's team, and he is walking around. I got photos of him just having heartfelt conversations in the Bible, pointing out stuff and talking to brothers behind bars. And somebody said that his face is now his testimony of how he has repented and changed ways. But I'm thinking, too, it is still nonetheless going to be, I know they say you can't judge a book by its cover, but sometimes you need to judge a book by its cover in order to keep your cover whole, your skin whole and unbroken. You need to be discerning. And yet in this particular instance, this gentleman with this whole face tattoo, oh man, seemed to be filled with the Spirit. I saw faces in there of, like I said, the deepest anger, the deepest anguish, the highest joy, the almost shining with joy. There's been more than one time that I've seen individuals in prison, and they are the ones who are the prison chaplain team members, or the prison preachers, the little lay preachers or whatever, the ministers or whatever you want to call them. They seem to have a beatific, not a beautiful, but a beatific. Is that the word? Where it's shiny, your face is shining. Somebody out there know what the word I'm looking for. It ain't beatific. Anyway, they shine. They have joy in their face and their eyes. And their eyes don't seem dead. I saw some faces in there, man, that honestly, and I'm not saying this to be melodramatic, but I honestly think I saw demons. I looked at them and I just took the breath away. Just, whoa, oh wow. I can't even meet the guy's eyes. You know what I'm saying? Dark eyes look like the darkness of the depths of hell, I guess. There's no light in the eyes whatsoever. Face just contorted and apparently in pain, probably spiritual anguish. And like I say, then contrast that with another man who is also a prisoner, who looks like, he look and feel like a dude you would see at church. You know what I'm saying? It's amazing. So down here below in the show notes, there's a few photos. I don't want to use all of Freedom in Jesus and stuff, but I did want to show a few photos of Freedom in Jesus Prison Ministries in action, doing what they do. And I also wanted to let you know, man, you can check Freedom in Jesus Prison Ministries out. Their website is FIJM.org. That's FIJM, Freedom in Jesus Ministries. .org. The whole name is Freedom in Jesus Prison Ministries, led by Stephen Canup and Don Castleberry. And man, I have to say, I commend these brothers. And I be ripping and running, making pictures and videos, and I can't always attend these crusades, but when I do attend them, they do feel worthwhile. But man, as I say, they are physically and spiritually and emotionally draining. But I think they are worth it. And I think that they are something that if you feel so led to do or so inclined to do, you should get in contact with Freedom in Jesus Prison Ministries and check them out, because the Bible commands us to remember those who are in prison. You're supposed to visit those who are in prison. Remember, there's a lot of people in the Bible who serve time in prison. Paul comes to mind right off the bat. I think did Joseph do some time in prison? I think he was in there unjustly accused or something. Matter of fact, I think he killed the dude. Was Joseph that killed one of Pharaoh's workers or something like that? And God used them cats. You know what I'm saying? God still used them mightily. So that is the thing you have to remember. And we have to remember as individuals who may not have ever been, people like me that didn't even know where the jailhouse was. In prison, even there, God can touch your life. Even in the pits of hell, God can touch your life. I bet you that these cats whose faces shine with light and righteousness that I've noticed among some of the darker souls, I bet you their faces were dark at one time too. I bet you their eyes was dead at one time too. And yet they are not currently. And so to me, that's testimony right in and of itself about the power of Jesus Christ, power of faith and salvation. And somebody sent me a text the other day, and the text was it was a video of some cat. He was breaking it down about how when you basically it was a critique of Christianity based on race, saying that Christianity is the white man's religion, and you end up basically having a white conception of God when you are captive and held as slaves. You end up having, this is all stuff that I read about in college and kind of used to believe back in the day. But you know what? Jesus is not a color and God is not a color. If you see that in your mind, then that's an issue you need to work on, probably. Because first of all, I don't think Jesus was white. Just as a matter of a historical matter, I don't think Jesus was white. If you were born in the Middle East 2,000 years ago, you probably would look like everybody else in the Middle East 2,000 years ago, which this was before the era of mass migration. This was before the era of being able to rapidly travel from one place to another. Most people back in those days, my understanding was the vast majority of people were born and died in the same village or same one or two villages. So say all that to say it was a homogenous population. Say all that to say they was brown people. You know what I'm saying? Jesus, I don't see how he possibly could have been white. He might have been darker or fairer skinned, but he would not, and by as far as I can tell, by my light, he would not have been anywhere near what we call a white guy. You know what I'm saying? I mean, but here's the other thing though. That ain't the point. If you thinking about that, that's what you thinking about when you think about Jesus. You need to, Jesus ain't politics. That's a political critique. Talking about power and relationships and stuff like that and race hierarchies and stuff like that. What that really is a way to get you caught up worrying about stuff about Jesus that don't matter. Stuff about God that don't matter. And again, I'm not blaming nobody or really pointing no fingers because, like I say, when I was in college, I investigated all this stuff thoroughly. Just starting to realize that as an older man, when I went into this prison this past weekend with these 20 or so, 30 other brothers, there was every shade under the sun. You know who you didn't really see in prison? I didn't see no Asians. That's interesting. I didn't see no Indians. I'm talking about not American Indians. I'm talking about Eastern Asian, Southeast Asian, or Southwest Asian Indians, rather. Pakistani types. I didn't see none of those in prison. There's white people in prison. There's a decent contingent of white boys, as they say, in prison. But far more noticeable the amount of black and brown people there. And I was looking at some of these people, and I'll say this kind of as we kind of conclude our remarks for today, but I was looking at some of the faces and I realized that, man, I'm almost certain that some of these gentlemen that I'm looking at here, judging by you can look in somebody's eyes and you can see the glint of intelligence and of drive and all that. And then you look in some people's eyes and you don't see that. And I'm thinking to myself, I wonder how many of these men in here had trouble in school. And I was like, how many of these men in here had, for example, dyslexia or were not able to read for someone? If you can't read, life is going to be ridiculously hard. And you're going to drop out of, you're going to end up dropping out of perhaps, or being turned off by one of the quickest ways to elevate yourself, which is to procure a good education. And some of these gentlemen in there look like they just never had any interest in school, and I didn't see the light of intelligence in their eyes and in their face. And that was a sobering thought. How many people are in there just because they didn't do well in school and might have had something like dyslexia or autism or something like that? Some kind of learning disability. I guarantee, I would not have, I say I guarantee, I can't guarantee, but I feel certain. I would not be surprised to learn that a good chunk of men in prison have learning disabilities like dyslexia. And I'm hitting on dyslexia because we have a guest that we hope to snag an interview in the next week, who focuses on dyslexia and how to treat it right here in Lubbock, from the Condra School. And by the way, the Condra School, you may be aware, is having a community event, and I'm trying to look on my electronics right now and see it. Can I there it go right there. Can I pull it up? It's called Heart for the Holidays. You are invited to our first annual community event, November 26, 2025, 10 a.m. to 1 at 1421 9th Street, Lubbock, Texas, right over here downtown. They're going to have hot meals, Thanksgiving meals to take home, Santa's visit, music by Steven Sanders, activities and community engagement for all ages, kids corner, card making, and small art project is presented by United Neighborhood Outreach, 501c3, hosted by the Condra School for Dyslexia Success. So it's really weird that I was able to go into prison, and that's one of the thoughts that struck me, is that some of these men probably had learning disabilities and dyslexia and similar things. And then I come out that same day. I came all the way back. That drive to freaking Amarillo, I do not like it. But anyway, I came all the way back and went right to First Friday Art Trail, and that's where I met the guest that we hope to have on soon, talking about dyslexia. And that person was telling me how the men that you see in prison probably have a good percentage of them have learning disabilities and dyslexia and that kind of thing. So, man, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with this today. You're missing the point if you're worried about people in prison to the extent of, they need to be in prison. We do need prisons. I agree. I'm not one of these people that think you should turn people out with no bail and let them be all out on the streets. We need prisons and mental institutions. Otherwise, if you don't have prisons and mental institutions, then what you do is you destroy the quality of life for other people who are not prisoners, who are not criminals, or do not have any kind of mental issues or challenges. And you destroy the life of those individuals who should be in some institution, but who are not. So you're making everybody's life worse. But on the same token, you need to have those types of institutions, because terrible as they may be, as imperfect as they may be, as many shortcomings as they may have, those people need specialized attention. One of the ways you can give them that specialized attention is to go and to the website of Freedom in Jesus Prison Ministries, or there's probably other ones. I would, if it's something that seems like that you might be up to, a challenge, because it is a challenge. But if it's a challenge that it seems like you might be up to, then hey, man, go visit the prisoner. When I was in prison, you visited me. That's what it say on the back of their shirts. So it's funny. I almost died in prison this weekend. And yet sometimes when you come out and recover from the ordeal, you feel that much more committed to life and to serving and doing things that you can do to help. LBK, thank y'all for tuning in today. This is your brother Robert Jenkins signing off. Episode 113 of the Focus LBK Show. We'll see y'all next week. Make sure you tune in, because we're going to have an in-depth conversation about dyslexia and that kind of thing. Also about this community event at the Condra School that I was talking about. We'll talk to y'all later. And man, give it a try if you think you can hack it. It is not for the faint of heart. Check out Freedom in Jesus Prison Ministries, FIJM.org. All right, now we'll see you next time. Peace.